The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. You've mastered the art of saying the right thing. White teeth smile, measured nod, voice as smooth as glass. While a storm rages behind your ribs, you shake hands, crack jokes, promise favors, and everyone seems pleased. Yet every, of course, feels like a tiny betrayal. Every polite laugh like sandpaper against your throat. You head to bed exhausted, but it isn't your muscles that ache. It's something deeper. A place language can't quite touch. And before sleep pulls you under, one raw thought pulses in the dark. This isn't me, and I'm running out of time to fix it. How did a life built on good intentions become a cage? Why does pleasing people steal the oxygen from your own lungs? The answer isn't that you're too kind or too sensitive. It's that you've mistaken survival tactics for a personality. Carl Jung called this carefully curated shell the persona, a mask designed to help you trade safely in the social marketplace. It can open doors, yes, but only by quietly bolting others shut. The moment you confuse the mask for your skin, you stop living and start acting, locked in a role that demands endless encores while your real self waits off stage, unheard. Every morning, you tighten those emotional shoelaces and step onto the set. You nod when someone interrupts. Smooth conflict with jokes that taste like chalk. Swallow your irritation because angry doesn't fit the brand you've sold to the world. The applause is addictive. You're so easy to work with. You're a lifesaver. Each compliment buys a little more silence from the part of you that wants to scream. The transaction is simple, validation in exchange for authenticity, and you've signed it so often the ink has faded into your fingertips. But bartering pieces of yourself has hidden fees. The bill shows up as chest-tight anxiety in traffic, Sunday night dread, sudden waves of sadness you can't trace to any event on your calendar. Your body keeps score. It knows how many times you said yes while your gut howled no. It knows how many emotions you shoved into storage to keep the peace, and it will collect. Look closer and you'll see the cracks. The half-finished passions, the friendships that feel scripted, the mirror that reflects a stranger wearing your face. These aren't glitches in an otherwise solid system. They're warning lights. Jung warned that the persona, when overused, becomes a paper prison, strong enough to hold you, flimsy enough to shred under the weight of who you really are. If you don't tear it down voluntarily, life eventually will, through burnout, broken relationships, or that numb emptiness you feel even on the good days. So here's the truth you've avoided. The mask protects, but it also suffocates. The moment you begin to question its necessity, you're already at the threshold of change. And crossing that threshold matters because the cost of staying put is your own voice fading into background noise until you can't remember its tone. In the next segment, we'll enter the battlefield beneath your polite exterior, where your ego clings to the mask while your unconscious fights for oxygen. You'll see how the conflict manifests in subtle symptoms long before a full-blown crisis, and why ignoring them is a risk you can no longer afford. You wake up and it feels like a truce has been signed overnight. The house is quiet, the inbox empty, the face in the mirror almost convinced that yesterday's doubts were a bad dream. But the calm is a set piece, arranged by the part of you that needs everything tidy. Deeper down, the battle never paused. While your ego rehearsed polite replies, the unconscious sifted through last night's dreams, sharpening images you tried to forget. The moment you open your phone, the first notification sound detonates the silence. You're back on the front line. Why does the smallest request feel heavy as an anvil? Why do harmless comments swell into insults inside your skull? Because two generals are giving opposite orders. The ego wants applause, stability, predictable schedules. The unconscious wants raw truth, whether or not it's convenient. When you obey one, you betray the other. That tension leaks into your muscles, your heart rate. your ability to breathe freely. Anxiety isn't a random malfunction, it's a coded message. Stop choosing comfort over reality. Your ego's favorite weapon is the checklist. Reply to that email, compliment the boss, keep your weekend free for family obligations. Each item ticked off feels like progress, but it's really camouflage. Under the tidy boxes, the unconscious loads ammunition, restless dreams, sudden cravings, flashes of anger at strangers who did nothing. It doesn't care about your calendar. It cares that you keep lying about what you need. Notice the patterns. You rehearse conversations in the shower, crafting lines you'll never speak. At night, you scroll for an hour, chasing a distraction you can't name. Your jokes get sharper, your patience thinner, and you wonder why you're always tired. These are battle reports. Fatigue is armor you never learn to remove. Sarcasm is a smoke grenade. It lets you retreat without looking cowardly. But every tactic costs energy, and you're paying with interest. Meanwhile, the unconscious drafts its own offensive. It hijacks your body. Stomach knots before harmless meetings, migraines on days marked important. It sabotages relationships by letting resentment slip out sideways, turning small annoyances into disproportionate outbursts. You apologize, promise to be better, tighten discipline, and the cycle starts again. Discipline without authenticity is just a prettier cage. Here's the truth your ego won't confess. The war consumes resources that could be building the life you actually want. While you police your image, the unconscious withholds creativity, passion, and the deep rest that only honesty can unlock. Imagine redirecting that energy. No more rehearsing sincerity, only living it. No more pleasing imaginary critics, only serving real values. Every conflict needs a deadline, and yours sneaks up at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, noon daydreaming while your name is called in a meeting. Those are ceasefire moments when the mask slips and raw thoughts rush in. Whose life is this? What am I postponing? The questions scare you, so you swat them away with tasks. But they return, louder, because unanswered questions become ticking clocks. But first, you must recognize the front line for what it is. Those random symptoms, tactical flares, that constant low-grade panic, incoming artillery, treating them with more coffee, stricter schedules, or forced positivity is like patching bullet holes with stickers. The fix begins when you admit there's a war at all. In the next part, you'll meet the personality type Jung found most exposed to this crossfire. If you recognize yourself in it, don't panic. Knowledge is a map, not a sentence. We'll use it to navigate out of the blast zone and towards something that feels like peace. For real this time. If this content makes sense to you, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you. You think you're simply kind, wired to sense moods, eager to smooth edges, but the truth is sharper. Your radar for approval is so finely tuned it borders on survival instinct. You walk into a room and, without effort, catalog every frown, sigh, and raised eyebrow. One misplaced look feels like a dagger aimed at your worth, so you rush to mend it before anyone notices the wound. The world applauds your sensitivity, yet each compliment tightens the invisible leash binding you to other people's expectations. Why does harmony taste like safety to you while authenticity tastes like danger? Why does the slightest disapproval make your chest seize as if you've broken a sacred law? Carl Jung called your wiring extroverted feeling, a psyche built to anchor identity in the emotional weather outside. It isn't generosity gone wild. It's biology meeting psychology, tilting you toward connection at any cost. Pleasing isn't a choice, it's the atmosphere you breathe, and every breath carries the risk of suffocation if the room grows cold. Here's how the blueprint runs. Step 1, scan for emotions. Step 2, adjust to fit the dominant tone. Step 3, Delete any impulse that might disturb the balance. Repeat until the line between what they want and who I am blurs into static. You become fluent in small sacrifices, canceling plans without resentment, laughing at jokes that grate, shrinking opinions into diplomatic half-sentences. Each concession feels minor in isolation. Together, they form a quiet conspiracy against your inner life. This wiring served you once. As a child, perceiving adults' moods kept conflict at bay. As a teen, mirroring peers secured a tribe. But adulthood demands a center of gravity inside, not outside. Your gift for empathy now operates like spyware, constantly pinging strangers for instructions on how to exist. The toll surfaces in tight shoulders, resentful sighs, and that split-second hesitation before you speak, editing yourself mid-thought lest the air tremble. Even praise is double-edged. You're such a good listener, they say, and the praise lands like warm sunlight until you notice how cold the shadow beneath it feels. Because if listening is your core value, what happens when you finally need to speak? Will the warmth vanish? The pleaser's terror isn't loneliness, it's conditional belonging. Love seems negotiable, earned through constant emotional labor. Miss a single cue, and the bargain collapses. So you overperform. Birthdays remembered, texts answered at midnight, projects rescued last minute. All proof that you're indispensable, all insurance against abandonment. Yet indispensability is a trap. Now you can't rest without guilt, can't say "not today" without shame. The world won't set boundaries for you, it will praise you for having none. Recognizing the pattern is painful but pivotal. You weren't born self-erasing, you were trained. Somewhere along the line, applause sounded safer than disagreement. That conditioning can be dismantled, not by swinging to selfishness, but by anchoring value internally. You define worth first, then choose generosity, not as reflex, but as conscious offering. Start with micro-rebellions. Reply later, not instantly. Voice a mild dissent instead of nodding. Let a silence hang awkwardly and watch the world keep spinning. Each small act proves catastrophe is a myth and your nervous system recalibrates. People might blink, adjust, even push back. Good. The relationships that survive your honesty are the ones worth keeping. In the next section, we'll decode the unconscious alarms you've ignored. Dreams that embarrass, cravings that confuse, ailments doctors can't label. They aren't random glitches, they're encrypted memos from the self you've sidelined. Learn their language and you'll swap constant vigilance for genuine calm, no approval required. At 3 a.m., your phone is silent. The city asleep, yet something inside you drums like distant thunder. You jolt awake from a dream that shouldn't rattle you. A hallway that loops forever, a faceless crowd that knows your name. Still the images leave sweat on your spine. By dawn you've brushed it off, blaming late-night snacks or stress. But the dream was a flare shot from the deepest layer of your mind. A place that refuses to speak in polite sentences because you've ignored every softer warning. Why do your nightmares feel more vivid than reality? Why does your body stage protests? A knotting stomach before harmless meetings, a shaky breath in crowded elevators when logic insists you're fine. Because the unconscious doesn't send emails, it paints murals on the inside of your eyelids and tattoos tension across your muscles. Each symptom is Morse code tapping out the same message. Stop lying to yourself. Take the recurring dream where you're shouting yet no sound escapes. That isn't random horror movie fodder, it's your silenced anger demanding airtime. The nightmare where you're naked in public. Exposure anxiety. Proof you've hidden so long that authenticity now feels like humiliation. The chase scenes, the falling elevators, the sudden floods, kinetic metaphors for emotions you've dammed up until the pressure cracks the wall. Dismiss them and they return louder, stranger, dragging symbols from myth because ordinary language keeps failing. The unconscious also hijacks your daytime feed. Cravings flare for sugar, shopping, scrolling, quick thrills that mute internal noise. You obey, feel a brief hush, then shame creeps in and the cycle tightens. These compulsions aren't moral failings, they're emergency exits when you won't walk through the front door of honest feeling. Even your immune system joins the rebellion. Unexplained rashes, migraines doctors label stress, fatigue that sleep can't cure. Your biology is staging an intervention. Ignoring it is like silencing a fire alarm because the noise is annoying. Listen to the symbolism. A migraine clamps your temples the day you agree to yet another favor you resent. Coincidence? Or a crown of thorns your psyche crafts to remind you the yes pierced something sacred? Heart palpitations before a family dinner could be your intuition pounding on the walls, warning that returning to old roles will suffocate the progress you've made. Treat symptoms in isolation and you chase ghosts. Translate them and you unearth directives. Set a boundary here. Speak a truth there. Rest before you collapse. The moment you start decoding, life shifts. You keep a dream journal. Within a week, patterns emerge. Recurring staircases, locked doors, forgotten luggage. Each pattern links to a waking scenario you've denied. The promotion you haven't pursued, the relationship coasting on autopilot, the hobby you shelved for later. Writing them down drags them into daylight where the ego must finally respond. Awareness doesn't solve everything, but it stops the psychic hemorrhage. Yet knowledge alone is not the cure. Action is. If the dream shows you drowning, schedule the conversation you've postponed. If the compulsion is endless scrolling, carve phone-free hours to face the silence head-on. Treat your body's rebellions as strategic allies. Migraines signal overload. Cancel something. Insomnia means unresolved friction. Address it before bedtime turns into a courtroom. Each responsive act tells the unconscious, message received, and the volume lowers. In the next part, we'll chart the route out of this labyrinth, Jung's process of individuation. It's not mystical jargon, it's a blueprint for reuniting the fragmented pieces you've scattered in everyone else's hands. You'll learn practical moves that turn inner signals into signposts, guiding you from chronic self-betrayal toward a life dense with your own gravity. Prepare to trade the safety of numbness for the risk of feeling fully alive. You've decoded the warnings, heard the body's revolt, watched your dreams play out like cryptic films. Now comes the question that terrifies every chronic people-pleaser. If I drop the mask, what's left of me? The answer is not a vacuum, it's a blueprint. Individuation, as Jung mapped it, isn't self-help fluff or a mystical detour. It's the disciplined craft of turning scattered fragments into a single, living architecture, one that can finally breathe on its own. Step 1 is radical witnessing. You sit with a notebook or a voice memo if writing feels stiff, and record the unfiltered narrative of your day. The envy you felt when a friend bragged, the anger you swallowed during that Zoom call, the joy you downplayed because it seemed too much. No edits, no justifications. Imagine a documentary crew filming your inner life. Your only task is to let the camera roll. This raw footage becomes evidence that you are more than the persona's highlight reel. Step 2 is shadow dialogue. Pick one recurring feeling, say, that spike of irritation when someone interrupts you. Personify it, ask, what do you want? Write its response without censoring. Maybe the irritation says, I want space to finish a thought. Suddenly the emotion isn't a glitch, it's a spokesperson for a neglected need. Repeat with jealousy, guilt, even numbness. Each dialogue cracks open a door to a room you've locked for years. Step 3 is boundary engineering. The ego loves theory. The unconscious demands practice. Start with one concrete action that risks mild discomfort. Decline an invitation you'd normally accept out of obligation. State your preference for once. Allow a friend to solve their own crisis. Your nervous system will fire alarms, heart racing, palms sweaty, because it equates boundary setting with exile. Breathe through the surge. Survival data will soon arrive. Nobody died, and I can still belong without self-erasure. Each experiment rewires the fear loop. Step 4 is creative reconstruction. Individuation isn't just subtracting false roles, it's adding authentic expression. Dust off that guitar, the painting kit, the half-finished novel. These activities aren't hobbies. They're bridges between consciousness and the unconscious. When you give form to instinct, melody, color, story, you let inner chaos reorganize into art. Creativity becomes both confession and communion, proof that your depths hold treasure, not just turmoil. Step 5 is ritual integration. Human brains change through repeated, embodied experience, not one-time epiphanies. Build micro-rituals that anchor your new alignment. A morning check-in. What do I actually feel? A weekly walk with no phone. A monthly audit of commitments that drain versus feed you. Ritual turns insight into muscle memory, so the mask loosens a little more each day without dramatic explosions. Understand, individuation hurts because every growth spurt stretches tissue that once felt safe. You might lose the role of always available, the badge of most agreeable. Some relationships will flinch when you stop shapeshifting, but the ones that can't withstand your truth never loved you, only your performance. Better to face that grief than to keep living on borrowed applause. And yes, fear lingers. The persona whispers threats. Who are you without me? Answer calmly. I'm the one who created you, and I choose when you're useful. Because the mask isn't evil, it's a tool. Individuation teaches you to wear it consciously, a surgeon's glove, not a second skin. In our final part, we'll explore life after the unmasking, how to navigate work, love, and purpose when authenticity is no longer a weekend hobby, but your default setting. We'll craft a roadmap so the freedom you taste doesn't drift into chaos, but settles into sustainable power. Ready to step through that door? The last chapter begins now. You've crossed the line where most people turn back. The mask now hangs by its straps, less a shield and more a souvenir of who you had to be. Here, on the raw side of authenticity, the air tastes sharper, like the first breath after a long dive. Freedom thrills, but it also disorients because liberty isn't a one-time victory. It's a landscape you must continually learn to traverse. First, expect turbulence. When you state a boundary that once stayed silent, some faces will stiffen. Let them. Discomfort is not danger. It's evidence that the script has changed. If guilt creeps in, treat it as an echo from the old operating system, not a verdict on your worth. Breathe and remind yourself, you decide the price of admission to your life. Over time, those who value the real you recalibrate. Those who only valued the persona drift away, and that's quality control, not loss. Second, anchor your days in core values. Each dawn ask, what truly matters today? And jot 3 bullets, no more. When requests arise, hold them against that list. If they don't align, say no or not now. This miniature ritual turns days into deliberate architecture instead of frantic accidents. Third, treat creativity as maintenance, not luxury. 10 unpolished minutes of music, paint, or words ventilate the unconscious better than any immaculate void. Feelings become form, form becomes clarity. Clarity becomes momentum. Fourth, build a council of honesty, 2 or 3 allies who prize truth over comfort. Meet regularly, agenda-free, and trade unfiltered updates. Candor keeps authenticity from warping into isolation or self-righteousness. Fifth, celebrate micro wins. Each time a reflexive yes transforms into a deliberate no, pause, exhale, Mark a tally, maybe a small dance. Tiny rewards retrain the nervous system. What once felt risky starts to feel natural, even exhilarating. Finally, craft a forward-facing statement, one sentence that stakes your claim. Example, I trade camouflage for clarity, even when clarity costs. Post it where your eyes land often. Lock screen, bathroom mirror, notebook cover. When the old persona whispers, that sentence stands guard like a lighthouse in fog.
Remember, you'll still wear roles, professional, partner, friend, but now you choose them like outfits, not skin grafts. Problems won't vanish, yet life grows lighter because you're no longer dragging the carcass of self-betrayal through every corridor. You'll notice new energy, sharper intuition, and relationships that feel like homes, not stages. If this journey resonated, drop a comment naming the boundary you'll test this week and hit subscribe so the next video finds you before old habits do. You've spent years rehearsing a role. Tonight marks opening night of the only performance that matters, being unmistakably, unapologetically you. Step into the light, no mask required.